This is Self-Starter. Hello again. Welcome to Self-Starter. This is a podcast that highlights the small business owners, the self-employed and freelancers who've taken the plunge to create their own desirable lifestyle. My name is Andy Dowling. I'm also the host of the Andy Social Podcast. I play bass in the Australian metal band Lord, and I'm also a dispute resolution specialist. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching at Andy Dowling, or you can head on over to selfstarter.com.au where you can learn more about yours truly, as well as anything and everything to do with the self-employment world. This episode is with Rebecca Want de Rowe of Want de Rowe Real Estate in Darwin. Now, as you'll hear in this episode, Rebecca says that this was an accidental business. In fact, starting a business was the last thing that she felt comfortable in doing. Having felt the first-hand experiences of family business failures as a child, there was a real reluctance to lean toward a world which had previously brought a lot of pain and stress. Nonetheless, life threw a number of surprises at Rebecca, which found her long-standing reputation as a respected property manager unexpectedly turning into this magnet for clients wanting to work with her and her only. Now, it was just a matter of turning this attraction into a long-term relationship. So, enter Want de Rowe Real Estate. The business is a boutique property management agency that looks after small property portfolios, focusing on customer service and care. With now being 4.5 years in, the business is doing really good. In fact, all of Rebecca's clients are a 100% word of mouth originating from her reputation of years of working in the community. I sat down with Rebecca to hear more of her story, which is really, really interesting. Her love of property since she was a child, managing a number of changes professionally and personally, as well as how Want de Rowe Real Estate accidentally became a business. So as always, you can check out the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au. You can go to the Want de Rowe website by going to wdrrealestate.com.au. But as mentioned, everything will be in the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au. So enough of me yapping. Please enjoy this really great episode with Rebecca Want de Rowe of Want de Rowe Real Estate in Darwin.
My name's Rebecca Want de Rowe, and I'm the Director and Property Manager of Want de Rowe Real Estate, which is a boutique property management business based in Darwin. We are a small business, and it's just myself and another full-timer and a casual staff member, so we're nice and small. And I guess we're a little bit of an accidental business, I guess you could call it, but we're doing a lot better than I'd ever imagined, and we're going strong.
Well, the accidental part, I'll definitely dig into. I'm intrigued. But I guess taking a step back, what were you doing before the business was created?
So I was actually working for, I have a history in politics and real estate. I actually had this love of real estate from a very, very young age. So I remember going for walks as a little kid, and I used to just look at properties and just think, if that was mine, what would I do? You know, how much would you get for rent and things like that. And over the years, I kind of, I guess my love for politics kind of took over, and I went down that path. I then decided to actually get out of that and do my dream of getting into real estate. I did sales for a while, and I realised that wasn't my passion. It really was the property management side of things. But being in sales, you know, you either succeed or you fail, and if you fail, it means all your savings goes. So I actually went back into politics for a while and got my savings back up, and then went back into property management and was working as, got back into real estate and was working as a property manager. And I realised my love for it and knew that was definitely, I was doing what I'd wanted. And yeah, I guess over time I got married. I was working ridiculous hours for a much larger agency, and just felt pregnant, was going to go on maternity leave, and I guess the lifestyle and the amount of hours I was having to put in at that agency with the amount of properties they had me managing and my level of service that I wanted to provide for my customers, I knew I couldn't do it. So the thought in the background was always about getting into doing my own business. My husband always thought I should, but I was very hesitant. I guess the big step came when an owner actually asked me to do it, to consider it, and that's how we started. So I'd worked in real estate before, but I kind of was in and out. And for many years, I was managing my own investment properties on my own, and did the real estate course because I actually wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing by my own tenants. And I guess the love kind of came in there.
Oh, there's a few things here. So it's really good. You mentioned before, like your husband said that you should have been doing this, but you were hesitant. Was there anything in particular that stopped you from doing it sooner? Was there, I don't know, a lot of people have a fear of stepping out and putting your name against something. What were the big things that were holding you back initially?
Yeah, failing was just, and I guess that's still my fear now, is failing. So we've coming up to 4 years we've been running, but my husband was probably talking to me about it for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years before I actually decided to take that step. But my dad, growing up, he had a lot of little businesses that he tried, and they all failed, and they all failed drastically. And my mum was always left with some debt after that. And I promised as a kid that I would never be a business owner. I would never have a small business. I would never be one of those. And now I am. So I think it's that, just seeing my dad and how he struggled, and he had this dream of having a small business, a successful small business, but seeing how that impacted our family is what really scared me.
Well, geez, I don't blame you. I mean, if that's, especially as a child, being I guess exposed to that and feeling the impact of that firsthand, seeing the results of the bad side of it. I'm surprised that eventually you're able to muster up the courage and take that step. And as you mentioned before, having somebody approach you and ask you to manage their property was probably a nice soft way to get you, I guess, interested or comfortable with the concept of potentially doing this on a bigger scale. One thing that going back really quickly with, I guess, your background and your family and the experiences that you had with small business, without digging into too much, because I mean it's family and there's probably a lot of sensitivities around it. But were there certain things that you took away in hindsight now, many years later, where you can see certain things that what not to do? Lessons that you've learned, from what your father did in business, that you'll be able to make a better decision moving forward.
Yeah, look, one thing I did notice once I started looking into doing my own business was the importance of having a business plan. My dad never had one of those. And he also, part of the business plan is looking at your competition, looking at, your market. And he had this big dream, but never did the work in making sure he was providing a product that people wanted. So he would get a great idea and go, well, this is what I'm going to do. And he'd go out and he didn't have any financial backing. So he was just scraping whatever money he could from, the family budget. And looking back, and I tell anyone now that is considering going into a small business, is the importance of having a business plan. Even if you only plan to be very, very small, you still need an idea of what your competition is doing, what their point of difference is, or what your point of difference is going to be in that market. And whether you're going to, whether you only intend to bring in a couple of $100 a week, or whether you intend to, to grow and be a bigger business, the business plan, I just can't say enough, is so important.
So that first person that came to you and pitched the idea to you for you to manage their property, in hindsight now and a few years into it, was that probably the big thing that pushed you over to really sort of warm you to that concept, to really sort of dive into this further? Or was that sort of just the last thing of, I guess, you already pre-planning that this was going to eventually happen regardless?
Look, I would say I was probably 60% convinced I would do it. I was really dragging my feet at this point, and I knew I was pregnant, and I knew that I would have to finish up work, and I kind of liked the idea of not having to worry about, am I going to be bringing in enough money to support my family? And then when this gentleman approached me, he said either he wanted me to either start up my own business, or whatever agency I would go to, he would follow. And he asked me, this gentleman had 15 properties, so he advised that I could go to another agency and request more money and offer to bring his property with me. So that was really lovely, knowing that it was actually me he wanted, and he said he would support me if I decided to go to another agency. However, he thought I would be better suited in having and going out on my own. And he mentioned it to me several times. The first time I thought he was just being sweet. He was just being very flattering. And then when he kept talking about, and he said, I'm happy to sit down over a coffee, and I'm serious, Rebecca, you need to do this. I spoke to my husband, and one of the fears was I could go out on my own, but what if no one wants to come over to me? So that's where I guess I call myself the accidental. We accidentally got into it. There was this intention, but I had no faith in myself, and I really thought that he would bring over his 15 properties, and that would be all I would manage. I really didn't think I would have anybody else want to come on board. So I decided to do it, and I thought, well, I've got he was about 6 months old after I'd done the study to actually open my own business. I thought, well, I can do this because I can still enjoy being a mum, and I can have that flexibility, but I'm only managing 15 properties, so I can give him that attention that he needs from me, and it's going to be, I guess, a bit of pocket money for the family, but I'm not putting a lot of stress on myself, and that's how we started. However, that only lasted 3 weeks. So I actually bumped into another owner doing grocery shopping, and she was asking when I was coming back, and I said, I've decided I haven't, and I'm looking after another owner. And she actually gave notice to the agency the next day and brought her 10 properties over to me.
Wow.
The following week, because they'd breached their agreement, so she could actually end their agreement very fast, very quickly. So she brought her 10 over, and then I think it was the following week, just through friends, I had another 5. So within the first month, we ended up hitting 30 properties without advertising, without really talking to anyone, and which was quite funny, because I did it thinking I would only have 10 and I could have a little 15, and I had that it would be, it wasn't going to impact my family so much, and I could look after my son, and everyone understood that I had a small child, and so I was going to be working around him, and they were still keen to come on board. So that's how I guess we accidentally grew to a bit bigger than where I thought we would be.
Well, I mean, any doubts that you had of yourself and where the concept or the thought of your own business would go from, just from, I guess, what you've experienced growing up, and just those horror stories or the bad stories along the way. I mean, geez, that's some great validation in a very short space of time to give you that boost that you needed.
It was a real good confidence boost, that's for sure.
And I mean, it no doubt isn't luck, and it's not something that has happened with no. I mean, for you, it would be no warning because you weren't expecting it. But I would assume that your relationships that you built over all that time leading up to it with these particular people and everybody that you dealt with was where your asset was. That was the value that you were providing. And little did you know, and until those people came knocking on your door, that you were building up your value in that area and those people. And that, I mean, it's sort of that putting in the hard yards without even knowing where it's going to go, but it sort of all comes to a point where it's coming back tenfold.
Yes, definitely. And you really don't think at the time when I was working for another agency, and I really liked my owners, and I really felt if I was going to work for them, I really needed to know how they worked. Everyone is different, and some owners were more high maintenance than others. And I mean, it took me a while in that job in learning how each owner worked, and then to make sure that I could provide for them the best services, working with what suited them. And at the time, I just thought, I'm a people person anyway. I love people. I love making new friends. And I really didn't think what I was doing back then was actually going to be benefiting me later. So it's a lovely surprise. It looks like being a people person actually pays off.
Absolutely, definitely. And I mean, those first few months where you've had this one person who's approached you, given you a bunch of properties, then you've bumped into somebody doing the shopping, and then it's sort of evolved and grown off that. Those first few months where you've suddenly gone, wow, like I've got all this work here. What were some of those challenges that you had in those first few months of just, I don't know, finding your feet, finding that rhythm? Like what sort of things were you confronted with in that time frame?
Look, probably the biggest mistake I made, which caused me a lot of stress, was not having enough confidence in myself, because what I had thought was that I was going to only be managing 15, maybe 20 at the most properties. So I thought, if I'm only looking after 15 properties, I don't need to invest in property management software, because I can just do up little spreadsheets and that will be fine. So I started the business literally just using spreadsheets, and when rent was coming in, it was going in a little Excel spreadsheet, and we grew at quite a fast rate that I could not keep up with the spreadsheets. And then by the time I started looking for property management software, I was actually quite busy. So trying to have that time of, putting a couple of hours aside so I could go through, video tutorials with these agencies and kind of figuring out what it was that I wanted for this little business. But also getting people to take you serious. There was a lot of agencies that were like, oh, you only manage 30 properties or 40 properties, you're not worth our time. And really trying to make sure I could connect with those people. And then once we got it in, I really struggled in, I understand the property management side of things, but I really struggled with the trust accounts and my obligations with the actual. I understood what I needed to do. However, putting it into this system and making sure I got my head around it, and I couldn't stuff up any of the trust accounting side of things, because that could possibly be my real estate license gone. So just having that stress, I did put a lot of stress on myself, and if I could redo it all over, I would have actually had that software ready to go before I took on any property. So trying to get the business rolling and being a little bit more professional than just having Word documents and Excel spreadsheets. That was probably our biggest one. And then I also found I decided to become a sole trader. Originally I thought about becoming a company, and then I saw all the paperwork that was involved and I got really overwhelmed by it. So I just went, it's just going to be easier if I'm a sole trader, so I'll go to a sole trader. And then after a year and a half, I wasn't comfortable being a sole trader anymore. I really wanted to go as a company. And that's when I actually made the effort and looked for a decent accountant. And my accountant now, she's amazing. I don't do anything to do with tax. She does it all for me. And she managed to get me running up as a company within an hour and a half. And here I was. I think I'd spent much longer looking at these documents, freaking out, stressing out. Oh, how do I fill it out? What does this mean? What does that mean? And in one afternoon, she'd send me an email, you're officially a company now. And I was like, why didn't I do this from the beginning? Because that then meant I had to change all my bank account details. Had to have new account details under a company ABN, changing our ABN, and that meant changing all my letterhead. That meant contacting all my tenants and advising, your rent has changed. And then, the bank account details had changed, so they had to change it with their bank, and then spending 3 months chasing them up constantly saying you're putting the money in the wrong account. And so again, I should have gone to get to my accountant to begin with, and I should have really looked into more the differences between a company and a trust account and what was best suited. But again, I did not think I was going to grow to the point I did. So I thought 15 properties, 20 at the most, I only need to be a sole trader because we're not going to be big. But so that, I guess that's where I look at it and go, I should have had more confidence in myself. And if I had, then I would have done these things to begin with. So they're the biggest lessons I learned right at the beginning.
It depends on how you look at it, because if you didn't go through those pain points, you probably wouldn't have, I guess, the hindsight or the appreciation that you have for where you are now. And if everything went smoothly and you had all that pre-planning and the confidence, maybe you might be in a more comfortable position in some ways, but in probably other ways you may not have learnt a few things about yourself along the way. And just that example that you said about spending, a year or year and a half being a sole trader, and when you're initially looking at the options and just going, this is too much. Like, I don't even know where to start. There's so much paperwork involved. And then an accountant comes along and does it in an hour and a half. I've seen, there's been quite a few stories on this podcast of other people that have put things aside that just seem far too complicated, but with, a bit of time where you're stopping and giving yourself the opportunity to, I guess, to begin with, just breathe a little bit and just work out, okay, if I can't do this, who can? And it's amazing how quickly things can move if we allow ourselves a little bit of time just to really sort of analyze what's going on and just taking a bit of stock and making that decision of what we're going to do with this situation. Because this is something that I struggle with all the time. I put things off all the time. There's complicated things I'm not used to, things I don't have exposure to or experience. It's too much, it's too overwhelming. I don't know where to start, so I don't start it. And later on down the track, I find out that it was actually not that bad after all, or somebody can come in and save me. But sometimes we're a little bit too busy, or it's too hard basket, or sometimes we're just a little bit too reluctant or worried that of showing a little bit of vulnerability that we don't know something and reaching out to somebody else for help.
Yes, definitely.
The moving along with, I guess, I'm just trying to think of where to take this next, because I went on your website and I had a look and I was really, really impressed with it. And mind you, I don't have a lot of comparisons with other businesses of your type, so I don't know whether you're just in line with the standard or whether you're setting the standard. But I was quite impressed with how user-friendly the website is. You've got an FAQ page, you've got a forms page, you've got friends of the business, that, there's a whole bunch of different utilities and companies there that people can lean on. And it takes a lot of the questioning out of it, where people are too scared to potentially reach out and ask a question and then make a decision themselves that may be incorrect. Where did that come from? Did you learn that the hard way, or did you see other people doing it wrong? Or is that kind of stuff online more common practice with the type of work that you do?
No, I actually found that when I was doing my business plan and I was researching other businesses, that's where I found I couldn't get much information from other businesses. And I found that really frustrating. There was a couple of the bigger agencies do it, and they do it quite well. But some of the smaller businesses, I couldn't get any information, and I was always getting that this website is, under maintenance, or just, a Facebook page, and it just really frustrated me. And I just thought, I want to be able to have a place where my tenants can find me, they can ask me these questions, and these were questions that I had already, was always already being asked a lot of. So I guess I didn't see a lot of it, so I wanted to make sure that if I was going to start a business, I wasn't going to have someone in my spot going, what does this business mean? What do they represent? What services do they provide? I wanted it to be very clear on who we were, and not seeing a lot of that with other agencies. I thought, well, that will be a bit of a point of difference for us, that I can actually give that information, be upfront.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. The point of difference. It's something that, for me, not having a lot of exposure to the industry from that point of view, I didn't know whether there would be other businesses that were doing a similar thing, but that stood out straight away when I looked at that, because I just think in general, regardless of the industry, there's still so many businesses out there that don't spell it out for people. They don't provide all the information. You have to dig, or you have to make a phone call, or you have to try and find, even just finding an email address sometimes is such a such a task.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you're relying on the person on the other end to be available, to be patient, to deliver that message in a tone that is going to be easily digestible by the person who's asking the question, and it can be quite difficult. And no doubt, if you didn't have those FAQs, or all of those forms, which I reckon that in itself would just save you so much time. If you didn't have those things on your website, you would be spending X amount of hours per week addressing those questions, or organizing for those types of forms to be sent out to different people along the way. And by just putting it out there, I think you're probably just saving yourself a lot of time and creating some efficiency.
Yes, and I also, a part of me wanted to make sure that I had a good website, because and I've still got it now. I'm constantly worried that people don't take us seriously, being such a small business and only being around for such a short time. I wanted to make sure that if someone Googled me, they could see that we are a genuine business. And being in such a small town, and we don't do any marketing, I wanted to make sure that when people, saw me on realestate.com and they were like, who's this? Is this a new agency? They could actually Google and see that we were a real business, that we do have a real presence. So that was another reason behind it, was just to kind of make ourselves look that little bit more professional.
So no marketing whatsoever. So, and just given what you explained with the accidental launch of your business, all of this that you have at the moment, all the clients that you have, is this organic build-up of word of mouth.
Yes. So all our clients are word of mouth. We're very lucky. So we've currently got 90 properties on our books. We've had quite a lot leave because they've sold properties, or some owners have started to self-manage because of the drop in rental prices here. We've also given a lot of properties back to owners, saying that we didn't want to manage their properties anymore. I'm very strict on what type of property and what type of client I want. So we've given some back. So I think we would have had about 130 all up come to us. And that's all through word of mouth. A few things that we do as well is when we do get a recommendation from someone, if that person comes through to us, if we do get a client out of that recommendation, we will always send the person that's recommended us, we either send them flowers, which doesn't, I think that's only happened twice, but the main thing we do is we send them a box of gourmet cupcakes with our logos on them, and with a card to say thank you. I really feel, especially in such a small town, that the best kind of advertising is just through word of mouth. So we always make sure we thank our clients for that. And I know I've actually had one client that's recommended us, I think, to 6 people now. She says she does it because she loves the cupcakes, but I'm not sure.
What an incentive. That's great.
Yeah.
It's so important to, and I think a lot of people forget this, especially when they start to see a little bit of success, and you start to see people coming in and they're paying for your services or paying for your product or whatever it is, and you start to almost, not everybody does it, but you kind of subconsciously disregard your customer because there's new ones coming in, there's a new person coming in, and so you're always looking to build and grow and find that new person, that next person. But if you take that step back and you look after your inner circle, they become your marketing team. those clients that came to you initially are an extension of your business in a way. They're a street team. They're the ones out there that are talking about the business, talking it up, being advocates for what you do. And that doesn't cost you anything. It costs you some time and investment to nurture and look after those relationships, but you're doing that already, and you're lucky that you've got a business that involves being a people person, and it definitely has so many additional benefits.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And one thing that you mentioned as well, and I want to just quickly touch on it because we haven't really spoken about it on this podcast before. You mentioned about, in some cases, you've given properties back to clients, and you've made that decision to no longer manage particular properties for whatever reason. You've got a set of standards that you want to upkeep. How important do you believe it is to say no to opportunities? Or opportunities might not be the correct word, but to things that come along and being able to say no, because I think sometimes we cause a lot of damage and we hurt ourselves because we feel like we have to say yes to everything.
Yes, that's very true. And I found that in my previous agency, I had this one owner and we couldn't do anything right for him. And I remember just working my guts out, and I loved my job, but there were a few days I didn't want to come into work because I was dreading getting that email from him, getting that call. And I'd done everything right. He was just one of those people I couldn't make happy. And I remember going to management, talking of, saying, we can't make him happy. Can we just tell him to go to another company? And they laughed at me and goes, we don't say no to business, and you just have to learn to deal with him. And I thought, well, I'm a small business. What's important to me is I absolutely love my job, but I don't want to go to bed thinking about, some owner that's being unreasonable. I don't want to, you're taking away time from my children where I could be, spending time with them, but instead I'm thinking about how am I going to reply, how am I going to deal with this. But also I didn't want their behaviour to impact on my staff. So I saw that from working from the bigger business, that I didn't want to come in on days because I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I didn't want to put my staff in that same situation. I want to make sure this is a fun place to come to. And if there's somebody that's making it hard, then it's just not worth it because they're going to do more damage in the long run. And look, we've left some people really unhappy, but they were doing more damage to my reputation as well. So when you've got an owner that's not wanting to do the maintenance or is ignoring you, and it's just being unreasonable, you can tell the tenant, I'm trying to get this address, I'm trying to get to this address, but they just think that you're being lazy. They think that you're not doing the job. So, and owners aren't the only ones that recommend you to new clients. It's also your tenants. So, and I always see my job as, yes, I'm paid by the client, by the landlord, but my clients are always the tenants and the owners. I kind of see myself as the middle person. My job is to make both people happy. And in these instances, these tenants were being let down and it was looking bad on me. And I just thought for the small amount of money you get each week, it just wasn't worth that stress. And I remember the first time I did it, my husband was, he was really encouraging it. And that night I had the best sleep. And I remember thinking, why did I hold on to that person for so long? And it just felt so good. But the other thing I've also had is a couple of owners where they've treated me like their slave. And very early on, there was one gentleman that was first time landlord. It was his first property, and he was quite young, and he was very rude. And I think it was within the first month, I just said he called me a liar for some reason. I said I was attending to something. He said, "You're lying. You're doing this." And I just lost it with him, and I just said, "Don't you dare call me a liar. You know, I work my ass off for my clients, and if you need to trust me, and if you can't trust me, then I can't work for you." And asked him to go find a new property manager, and I had a lovely long email from him that night apologising and saying he's right, that he needs to learn to trust me more. It's his first property, and that he was wrong in saying that I was lying to him. And our relationship's been really good since then. But I feel like sometimes there are some owners that you do have to be very firm with them, and you don't want to, because they're a new client. You want to say yes to everything, but I'm not a slave. I manage other people's properties as well. I will always do the right thing by them. But I've done that twice, where I've had to be very firm with owners, and I've found that I've actually gained more respect from them. So it's not something you want to do, and I would rather not do it. But in both those instances, I'm glad, and I'm definitely glad I was able to hand over the properties for the ones that I have done, and would not be afraid to do it either. But now I guess I actually ask a lot more questions of potential clients when I go and meet them. You know, I give them my pitch, but then I ask them about them. You know, what is your idea of maintenance? Do you know what wear and tear is? And I explain to them that we don't take on every person that comes to us. We are picky, and that if they do want to come with us, then I've got some conditions as well that they would need to agree to, such as owners can't do their own maintenance. I have to have my contractors do them, and that maintenance is a must. It's not negotiable. And pretty much if I can't get hold of them, then I will make the executive decision, where a lot of owners are saying, no, if you can't get hold of me, you just keep trying, or you don't do that maintenance until you get hold of me. And that can be 6 weeks, and you can't leave someone's air conditioning not running for 6 weeks. So I've got a lot more conditions, and I've learnt that I've become a lot harder than when I first started, but I think it's for the best.
Well, you said it before. It's the respect that you get by having that standard that everybody needs to meet, and especially if you're coming from a place where you're being reasonable and fair. And if people don't want to play by those rules, then that's completely fine. And the fantastic thing about it is that this is your business, and you're empowered to be able to make decisions, and with that comes consequences, and you make those assessments before you make the decisions as to what are the outcomes going to be before I make this call. But no doubt, being able to articulate that to people and demonstrate what your standards are, and not just accepting anything and just running with it and letting other people sort of run all over you, you would no doubt just be building respect with your existing client base, probably the local area and the local market as well, with anybody out there that might not even be ready to look at a service like yours, but understand that if and when a time comes, that you'll be one of those options that they will heavily consider because of the reputation that you have.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So 4 odd years in now, what's the next few years look like? What's the next 12 months look like for the business? Is there grand plans here, or is it sort of just to keep it moving and keep the momentum going? What's it look like?
Look, if you ask my husband, he's got a lot of big grand plans.
Okay.
I think mine is probably still that confidence factor. I found the hardest part of having a business is staff, and getting good staff. I struggled for a while, but my colleague is, when I introduce her to people, I actually introduce her as my left leg, because I would be lost without her. She helps carry me, she helps carry the business, and she's amazing. But I'm stuck in this area going, do we grow, or do we stay how we are? We're very comfortable where we're at. We've got we have days where we're so busy we can't even talk to each other because we just head down, and there's other days where we're quiet and we're going, well, let's go for a nice long lunch. And we're loving where we're at, where we've got that every day is a different day, and we think if we grow we could actually make things a lot harder. And my fear is growing and not being able to provide that same standard of service to our clients. So my accountant is probably more like my business counsellor. I go to her and go, I'm not sure what I should do. What are we doing here? So I think at the moment we're probably looking at staying the same size for the next 2 years. But as my 2 kids grow up and they get a little bit older and don't need me as much, and I guess I don't need as much flexibility in picking them up from, childcare and preschool, I think we would look at growing. My dream is to keep it small, but what I would love in 10 years is for us to have, be me, 2 other property managers, admin, and 2 assistants. So still quite small, not a big agency, but bigger than what we are. That's probably my dream. But in the near future, we're actually doing some office renovation. So we're going to actually have a bigger office to actually give us that room to bring more staff on if we wanted. But at the moment, it's just building the office, getting it bigger, and then maybe keeping us where we're at the moment for the next 2 years, and then hopefully slowly grow it at a slow rate and bring more staff on. I think that's the dream.
Well, that renovation of the office and making it bigger is your pre-planning, the thing that you didn't do with the CRM or or going with the company option as well. This is something that you're doing, even though you're not ready to expand your team. You're making those first few steps to get ready for it when the time's right. So
yes.
so you're on the right track.
Oh, good. Good. I just want someone to tell me, go, right, this is what you need to do now. And go, okay, we're ready now. I listen to my husband. He wants us to be a team of 40 and, and we're going to be huge. We're going to take over the Darwin real estate market. I'm like, okay, honey.
Slow and steady.
Yeah.
Well, it's exciting. And I mean, to hear the story and the way that you describe it as this accidental sequence of events that have got you to where you are today, and for you to say that things as they are now, and while at times they can be quite busy and full on, you're happy with where you're at. And I think it's fantastic to see the success that you've had, and the way that you're doing it is great. And there's so many great things that I've got out of this, and for me, one of the things that's sort of helped me over the years is, and it's only been in recent times that it's sort of clicked in my own mind, and you've sort of validated a little bit more with me, is the power of just being able to be a good communicator and talk to people, building rapport with people, and having just those personable skills. I think they have been quite underrated for a long time, and I think they never have been held in high regard. And I think those types of skills are more and more sought after, because they are the point of difference. They are the things that make people choose somebody over somebody else. It's that rapport building and the amount of time that you invest in individuals that can make a world of difference.
Yes, I agree. When everyone's busy on social media and a lot of people I agree you need to have a social media presence, but nothing beats having that personal one-on-one contact with someone. And I think what I like, especially for my tenants to know, is that I'm always available. So not that I'll have to wait till Monday 9 a.m. before I can call. I'm available now. I'm always available. And if it's something that people are, someone's a bit anxious, I'd rather them call me straight away. And spending that time building that relationship with your clients, your landlords, your tenants, even your contractors, has worked wonders. And when everyone's so busy on social media, just actually spending that bit of time and building a relationship with someone is much better, I think.
It stands out even more so than before because of the way that we all communicate normally on a day-to-day basis now, and I think the face-to-face contact doesn't happen as much as what it used to be in the past. So I think when it does happen, it's really noticed. So
Yes.
it's so for the people that are really good at it, yeah, they're they're in a good position. So it's really good.
Oh, good. I'm doing something right.
Well, I'll put a whole bunch of links and everything that we touched on to your business on the website in the show notes for the episode. And if anybody, I'm hoping I get an increase of listeners from the Darwin area, but and these podcasts are great because you can listen to them at any time, and it could be, within the next few weeks, or it could be the next few months or the next few years. They're not going anywhere. But when somebody is listening to this and potentially you might be able to provide a service that they're interested in, what's the best way of reaching out to you?
Look, I'm happy if people want to contact me through our website. They can either call me on my mobile or via email, Facebook. I actually happy to take inquiries anyway. Whatever suits someone, I'm happy to work with them.
Easily available. I love it.
Yes.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much. And once again, thank you for sacrificing a little bit of your Friday night with me. And I've absolute pleasure talking to you. And I look forward to seeing where the business goes in the future as well.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been exciting.
Thanks, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed that chat with Rebecca from Want de Rowe Real Estate in Darwin. As always, you can check out everything in the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au. I'll have all the links to everything that Rebecca's involved with. If you're in Darwin and you need a property, or you have some properties that need to be managed, then Rebecca might be your person. So everything will be in the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au. However, before we wrap this up, I have some key takeaways from this chat with Rebecca. Now, I got 4 key points from this chat with Rebecca, and as always, you know the drill. If I missed something or you got something slightly different from this chat, I would love to hear from you. Please drop a comment in the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au, or you can message me via any of the social media platforms by searching at Andy Dowling. However, here we go. Number 1, a business plan makes all of the difference. We've touched on this previously in episode 5 with Berry Mountain Cycles. However, Rebecca cannot emphasize enough the importance of a business plan. Having clarity of what you are doing is critical to ensure you are protecting your venture as well as you and your loved ones. Rebecca learnt this the hard way growing up, having identified that a lack of business plan hurt her family businesses. Number 2, their failures are not your failures. Despite having some tough memories of hardship due to failed family businesses, Rebecca was able to push through these deep-seated feelings. I think we all know friends and family members who use their bad experiences to inform us how to approach our own goals. It's always good to learn from others. However, it's really important to remember that other people's failures are not your failures. Number 3, your character is your asset. It's so simple, yet it's so hard for many people. Rebecca's approach to her clients and people in the community over the years have given her a reputation of reliability, care, and professionalism. Sure, Rebecca would no doubt be knowledgeable and skilled in what she does. However, it's her character that is her true asset. Be sure to always work on yourself personally. Learn about your personality strengths and weaknesses and harness them for good. You'll be absolutely amazed at how much of this makes or breaks opportunities. Number 4, set your standards and learn to say no. There is absolutely nothing wrong with saying yes to everything, depending on your type of business. However, the power of saying no is highly underrated. Sometimes we get stuck in the weeds of a cheap product, a high maintenance customer, or simply dealing with a situation that is below the standards that we set. There is nothing wrong with saying no to a customer or an opportunity if they do not meet your requirements or standards. It's also a case that the prospective customer may actually get a better service and outcome elsewhere. Remember though, it's how you say no that counts. And that's it, folks. Those were my key takeaways from this chat with Rebecca from Want de Rowe Real Estate in Darwin. As always, all of that information and everything we discussed in this episode is in the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au. There's a nice little Facebook plug in there so you can easily leave your comments. So please let Rebecca know what you thought of this episode. Now, before we wrap it up, as always, if you want to reach out to me, you can do so via Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter by searching at Andy Dowling. There's plenty of contact details on the Self-Starter website. And I must say, as always, thank you so much for the feedback, the constant encouragement, the guest recommendations. As you can see, we are branching out all over this country. So please keep them coming because I've got plenty of stuff in the works and I'm loving where this is going. Lots of great episodes to come, so please continue to share this around. It means a hell of a lot to me. But until next fortnight, folks, keep moving forward, keep chipping away at your goals, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Larry.